And I will share our PowerPoint. Here we go. All right, go,
Great.
Cindy.
Great. So hi everyone. It's nice to see some of you I know and or at least seeing your faces. I'm happy to be here to talk a little bit about the 411 on childcare. But before I begin, I would just like to give a little bit of a shout out to Laura, who testified before the Department of Human Services budget listening session. I thought your testimony was fabulous. And the content was incredible. And the baby in the background, well, not very loud, just depicted what so many parents, primarily mothers, are going through when trying to deal with childcare and work and be, to balance all of these important areas of their lives. And it's not easy. I just thought I wanted to, I put it on Facebook, but I just wanted you to know how terrific I thought your testimony was. It was great. And easy, right? Because you had it, you knew what you wanted to say. The worst thing was trying to wait for your name to be called. So that's always takes the time. We got to find something else to do. But having the parent voice is so important. We at ACNJ, we kind of lay the foundation, right? But at the end of the day, we are paid. We love our work, but we're paid to do it. To have the voice of parents, it is such an incredible combination and so strong. So please, all of you, if you have, I don't know, Hannah, I know that it was taped. It was videotaped. I'm not sure if you sent people the snippet of Laura. She was terrific. Anyway, okay. So the 411 on childcare. There's a lot going on in childcare. You're living it, but from a policy standpoint, there's an awful lot going on. So can we go on to the next one? So why is childcare so important? And obviously it's for parents to go to work. They need a place for their children to be safe and well cared for and educated, but it's so much more than that. We know that children's brains are developing in these very early years. This is a critical time for their growth, both physically and emotionally. And we want to make sure that all children have access to high quality childcare in preschool. And so let's go on. So how is this system paid for? So there are two ways. There's private tuition by parents. I know that's the way I paid for my 3 kids to go to childcare, was that, at the beginning of the month, the first of the month, we wrote a check for the childcare for that month, regardless of whether our child was sick, we were going on vacation, it was snowy out and school was closed. It was the amount that we paid every month. So that's one stream. There's another stream called the child care subsidy, which many of you, certainly have heard about along the way if you're not eligible yourself. And that is when a family who is working, who is considered low income, which means that they make about 200% of the federal poverty level. What does that mean? It's about $55,500 for a family of 4. If you make less than that, then you, assuming that you meet all the criteria, the eligibility, you would be eligible for a child care subsidy. And so what that does is to help a family pay for the high cost of childcare. There are in many communities, that's all that is taken, but in others, the parents will have to add additional money. But it's certainly not. It's not the amount in which, for example, a private tuition payment is made. Okay, so we did talk about. Let's go on to the next one. So, as I said, that's your initial eligibility. Oh no, go back one. I just want to make sure we talk about that, and that's $55,500. Right now, there is a bill in the legislature that would go up to have increase family eligibility, which would go up to 300% of the federal poverty level. What does that mean? It's about $86,000 for a family of four. But if you have two kids in childcare and you're, either a single mom or even, both parents working, $86,000 and paying on childcare doesn't go very far. So you can understand why there's a great push to, can we increase eligibility by increasing the amount of of what a family makes per year. Okay, let's go on. So what does all this mean? And we're going to talk about it for infants. Because why do we pick infants? Because they're the most expensive age group when we're talking about childcare. We've had a lot of increases thanks to some of the federal dollars that came because of COVID. And so an infant, if you're in a child, if you have a baby and you are eligible for the subsidy, the program is getting about a little more than $1,500 a month. This is a huge increase, almost $500 increase since the beginning of COVID. So that's a big increase. It's about, and this is when a provider has a child, can be 6 hours to 12 hours, but it's about $1,500 a month, about $350 a week, about $70 a day. But when you look at it for an 8-hour day, it's about $8.80. Does anybody know what our minimum wage is now? Can we have a raised hand? Does anybody know? Okay, today it is $13 an hour. On January 1st, it goes up to $14 an hour. And then in 2024, it will be at $15 an hour. And this was legislation that was passed early in the Murphy administration, trying to get to $15 an hour. So when you think about right now, it's $13 an hour. You see how it works out for even the subsidy payment. So even with this huge increase, it still works out to a little less than $9 an hour, about $4 less than what our minimum wage is. So there's consequences for both funding sources. What do I mean that? Regardless of how it's funded, programs find it hard to function and often are on razor thin margins. Why? Because it costs a lot. So first of all, you're looking at this subsidy for infants. So you're in an infant, you're a teacher in an infant classroom. Even though the subsidy works out to $8.80, guess what? Your boss, the childcare director, has to pay you now $13 an hour. So you have the minimum wage, and then you have the problem with staffing. It's really hard work to work with babies. It's very rewarding, but it's hard. Particularly since you usually don't have one baby, but licensing allows you to have up to 4. So that's a lot of hard work. And it's been really, really hard to find staff to be in these classrooms, to be across the board. I don't want to make it just about babies, but particularly hard for babies, because lately during the pandemic, potential employees and existing employees said, wait a minute, I can go to Target and Amazon, not Amazon, because they're letting people go, but Target, you can go to some of the big chains, Walmart, Target, and you'll make more money. And so it's been really, really hard. And even for private pay. So let me just take a step back. So what are providers doing? They're jacking up, they're trying to give $15 an hour, even though they really can't afford it. Recently, a provider said to me, and it's really stuck with me, the minimum wage doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, my minimum wage right now is $20 an hour, because I can't get people to come into the door without at least offering $20 an hour. And that's tough if you don't have the money coming in. And it's the same even if you have all private pay payers. And the reason is because you don't want your tuition to go up too high, because parents are not going to be able to afford it. So many providers are having that struggle of trying to get staff, recognizing that they really can't raise their tuition, and they're not going to get a higher subsidy payment, and they're really, really struggling. So sometimes what's happening is the costs outweigh the benefits. and more programs are opting out of teaching or caring for infants and toddlers. It's just too expensive and you can't find the staff. So that has been a problem. We have infant toddler, what we call deserts throughout our state, where it's just too hard to find care for our babies. Recently, a state legislator and his wife, who we work with, had their first baby, and they went looking prior to the baby being born, were looking for childcare. And they were told that this is a state senator, and they were put on a bunch of waiting lists. And the wife said, wait, are we in a desert? Are we in a childcare desert? So yes, the answer was yes. And so it's hard for everyone to find care. Okay, let's go on. So what do we have right now? Right now we have about a little under 4,000 licensed childcare centers and about 1,200 registered family childcare homes. What does that mean? So everyone knows what a licensed center is, a childcare center, but there are homes that are registered who care for children, lots of babies and toddlers, and they are, unfortunately, they are decreasing almost by the month, the number of registered homes. We started I'm trying to think what the number was. I think it was like 2,400 in 2001. Look where we are right now, more than half. And the reason is that they too have struggled with subsidy. But the unique thing about childcare home, registered homes, family childcare, is that they meet the needs of working families that may not work 9 to 5. They work, sometimes they're open 24 hours a day. They work, weekends. And so they meet the needs of a very particular population. They're also more often reflect the community in which they live or in which their home is in. And so it's a real struggle we need to have policies that will engage people to say, you know what, we can start a registered family home. Okay, let's go on. So look at the numbers. We have about more than 45,000 children in receiving subsidy, and about 10,000 of that 45,000 are babies. That's more than almost a quarter, a little under a quarter. So you see lots of children, and there are a lot more that are eligible but don't have access at this time. So I just want to mention this report. It is an old report. We're finishing it up a similar report. And what we knew at the time was that there was about 207,000 children under the age of 3 in our state where their parents were working. But there was only the capacity, and we didn't look at family child here, for 55,600. So you see, where are those, what is it, like 150,000 children? And they may be in good care, they may be with family members, they may be absolutely fine, but that's 150,000 less who may not have a care option. And that's an obstacle for parents. We saw this with COVID, particularly, where there's a struggle with, well, I've got to go to work, who's going to watch our baby? And so what we've seen that's developed is this, what I call cobbled care, right? You've got your mother has the baby one day, a neighbor has the baby another. And when you think about, all of them may be very loving and warm environments, but those transitions, putting the child in different areas, it may vary on how much attention the child gets. Are they reading to the child? All the things that we know are going on in quality childcare. And that is no disrespect to anybody's mother. I'm just saying that we don't know much about cobbled care. We don't know what's going on for children in those types of situations. So let's go on. So where are we now? Well, it's really easy to say that childcare was in a crisis long before COVID. And the reason is that all of these issues, staffing, money, all of those issues were the same issue. All those existed prior to the pandemic. And you remember that early on in the pandemic, many of the programs were closed. And thanks to some really good policies that the Department of Human Services used, some money continued to come in for those programs that had subsidy children. They continued to pay even though they were closed. If you had just private pay kids, that was a problem. That many, no money was coming in. So when they reopened, there were lots of problems, like the cost of things, right? All of a sudden you're doing cleaning, you need cleaning supplies that were often hard to find, but were necessary for you to keep your facility in a position, in a clean environment, particularly since at the time there was a lot we didn't know about COVID. And there's been, and also enrollment was down. Parents were kind of afraid to send their kids back, so enrollment was down. So there was a huge hiccup in the startup. The good news is that remember I said that the payments were continuing to come. Well, it's a policy that that pays on enrollment rather than attendance. What does that mean? Can you imagine a school district being told, well, you had a lot of kids out in December because they had the flu, so we're going to give you fewer dollars. That's what childcare, that's how childcare was paid prior to the pandemic. Now how many kids are enrolled, regardless of whether they're sick or not. And think about infants. Many of you are mothers. Think about how sick infants get. They get a cold, you're not bringing them to childcare. So recognizing that this is a sound policy, the Department of Human Services has continued this, and it will continue until the end of our fiscal year, our budget year, which is next June. So that's good. But staffing still remains a problem. A few months ago, we took U.S. Senator Menendez to a program in East Orange, and it's a high quality program, has state funded preschool, and we went on a tour, and there was empty classroom after empty 5 empty classrooms. Why? Not because the parents, there was no enrollment, there was no interest on the part of parents. They couldn't find teachers. So this is still going on. And so as a consequence, remember thinking about, so what are parents doing when they can't access care? Okay. So what's happening? The cost of business still remains high. Cleaning supplies are still warranted. Still worried about how do we pay for our staff when we really can't afford to pay what they want. We were so lucky for 2.5 years because there was significant federal dollars coming in, but it was always in the context of an emergency, right? COVID was an emergency. There was, and so those dollars are drying up. There was a bill that President Biden was pushing called Build Back Better that did not become law, and a modified version of it was signed into law, which did not include any money for child care. On January 1st, as you said, the minimum wage is going up. There's a lot of nervous people because they know that they're going to pay more. The good news is that a bill was signed into law, passed both legislative branches of the government signed into law, called Thriving by 3, which is to expand access for infants and toddlers throughout the state, particularly in those those communities that are infant toddler desert. And there's a whole package of bills that ACNJ has been involved in that is moving through the legislature that deals everything from preschool expansion to as we said, the increase in eligibility to making the payments by enrollment for forever, or to pay longer than June of 2023. There's a tax tax credit for staff. So there's a whole bunch of things that we're trying to move on. So there's lots and lots of work to do, lots and lots of reasons why we need you to be engaged in these issues. I think that's it. Isn't it? Okay, so what about you? So certainly you have friends, talk to them. When I think about Laura, that's one incredible way, is to testify. But it's also contact key policymakers. I say this at every time I'm talking about advocacy. All politics is local. What does that mean? When you call one of your state legislators or your member of Congress and you tell them, this is what's going on, I can't find childcare. It is a whole lot different than ACNJ coming up with a pie chart about the lack of childcare. I mean, both are important for different reasons, but all politics is local and your legislators will listen to you. So testify at hearings, write letters to your local newspapers. I always say you have to be an advocacy nudge. Why? Because so many times, and I've heard this many times from childcare providers. Well, I wrote a letter and I never heard from them. Well, that happens all the time. What would you tell your kids? Go back and try again. Keep being nudgy. That is what advocacy is. A good advocate is a nudge. Just keep going back and trying to get your point across and talking to them. And what are you doing in the meantime? You're building a relationship with your legislators. And so they will use you as a monitor or as a gauge as to what's going on. Okay.
There's a couple more slides, but I'm thinking maybe let's end it here and open it up for a discussion. Yeah.
Great.
Does that sound good? Okay. And let me just stop recording so that way we can open it up.